Part 2 of session 48, let's discuss 3D cycle incarnation. Let's begin. In the first part of this session, we covered what I would consider fourth and fifth density evolution information, and I ended up there because the next question is a long one, so I wanted to cover it completely different. And you can also see that it changes gears a little bit, and so the topic sort of ends pretty well with question 6, and now we go into question 7. There's not much to say before we start, because there's nothing to recap from the last video or the last part of the session. There's nothing to connect here. We're gonna get into, I would call it 3D cycle incarnation, but there's going to be some programming and some other stuff as usual that comes out of this. The question is a very specific one, and you're gonna see why is it requires so much to talk about. And even still, Ross said that, you know, this was just some generalization. We're gonna see why, and I think that's probably the best message, is why it was a generalization, and you know how we can actually put this information into our lives and just discern a little bit more what the purpose of being incarnated in 3D or third density is. So not much to say again. Let's go into this massive question that we have, where Don says in question 7, "Thank you. I would like to take as an example an entity at birth who is roughly high on the seniority list for positive polarization and possible harvestability at the end of this cycle, and follow a full cycle of his experience starting before his incarnation. Which body is activated, process of becoming incarnate, the activation of third density physical body process as the body moves through this density and is acted upon by catalysts, and the process of death and the activation of the various bodies, so that we make a full circuit from a point prior to incarnation back around through incarnation and death and back to that position, you might say, in one cycle of incarnation in this density. Could you do that for me?" So I'm gonna do this for you and just summarize what Don is asking here. In essence, what Don wants to do, and this is again very, very scientific of Don, he wants to take the point in which we are ready for incarnation and draw a full cycle of the programming, I suppose, that goes into it, the evolution, and or not the evolution, well, it's always an evolution, so part of the evolution, the process in which, you know, the incarnation goes, and then death, and then go back to the point of beginning, the point of start. Now, the only thing that I see that Don gave here was that the entity was of high seniority. And I guess this is relevant for other things that I think are going to be, Don is going to ask definitely in the next question. But this is the only thing we have. And you'll see why Ra is going to say, it's kind of difficult to say, just a generalization, but we'll do our best. So this is basically what Don is asking, you know, what's happening, you know, from the point in which we begin our incarnation all the way to return to that point. And so Ra is going to answer this and say, "Your query is most distorted, for it assumes that creations are alike. Each mind-body-spirit complex has its own patterns of activation and its own rhythms of awakening. The important thing for harvest is the harmonious balance between the various energy centers of the mind-body-spirit complex. This is to be noted as of relative import. We grasp the thrust of your query and will make a most general answer, stressing the unimportance of such arbitrary generalizations." So I think there was an important point that is, oh yeah, it's it's important to mention what seniority of vibration is, because it's going to be relevant. I'll mention it again when it comes to that point when Ra is describing the example of the entity incarnated here and so on. But seniority of vibration just means that the entity has gone through activations of the various energy centers up until the heart center. That is the crucial one, because that's the one that makes the entity able to program its own incarnation process, catalyst, and so on. Parents, people that are going to be around them, and so on. It's like you gain dungeon master qualities. You become, the programmer of the computer. So you create your own incarnation based on what you feel that you need to learn, or it's not specific lessons, but it's experiences that will bring about those lessons. And it's up to the entity incarnated here through the veil to go through this process, but that's beyond the point. The thing is that is seniority of vibration, which is, again, it's important to notice because of one relevant point that we're going to touch on. But then Ra says that first, the query is most distorted because it assumes that all creations are alike, meaning that, the process doesn't have, it's never the same. The type of programming that is done, the turns that may take, an entity here, even if it has activated the heart, it's not a linear process. So there are things that happen, and that's just the beauty of the game that we play here. Sometimes people may take this as you have to have a linear process. That is the right way to do it. So people who mess up their incarnation, they are delaying their process. All of these human terms that we throw into our lives and our past lives. And, I did these terrible things and now I'm paying for it and so on. This is all very 3D human thinking. This is not how the universe works. The universe was not created by 3D humans. The universe is a whole creation. So it doesn't matter. What I'm trying to explain here is that the take away that linearity of the cycle that needs to go perfect, and you can see all the possibilities just, stemming out of this infinity of probabilities that we can have. So, in any case, that's why they say that each mind body spirit complex has its own patterns of activation and its own rhythms of awakening. Exactly. Everybody has their own patterns of activation. It's not like you have to go step by step. All of your energy centers are there, and depending on what you want to do, then you may suppress some for the negative, or you may even suppress the lower ones and try to activate the upper ones. It's a game that we're playing here. I know some people may want to say it like, it is a process in which we have to go through, and that's just the seriousness of 3D again getting in the way. Sure, there is an evolution process. We all have to go through that, but there are no rules to this. There are only laws that need to be followed. Period. So the important thing for harvest is the harmonious balance between the various energy centers of the mind-body-spirit complex. Here Ra reminds us of something that's crucial, very important. See, linear thinking might say, well, I need to activate my energy centers, this fashion, and I need to do this. That's the organizing mind. That's fine. It's fine to grasp the idea, but it's not the way it's done. Ra is reminding us that, I forgot which session it was, a couple of sessions ago, I think. I don't know, they just fly recently. Time is flying for me. But they mention how a weak entity may be more harvestable because of the balance in between its energy centers, rather than somebody who is fully activated, in their heart. The martyr. I think it was that session 44 it might be. But we talked about that. And Ra mentioned this importance of, and it's funny that they don't say, we stress this, because they always stress it. They always say, like, harmony balance in the energy centers. It's of the most important thing. They do mention, they said the important thing for harvest is the harmonious balance. So they're putting this just as, you know, the big title here, like, this is the important thing for harvest, not the activation. Forget seniority of vibration here, you know, that they have the possibility and so on. No, somebody who just got incarnated here for some reason can possibly have, you know, harmonious balance and be able to be harvested. Who knows? So, and again, being harvested is not, you know, something, shouldn't be a stress, what I want to say. So, what else do they say? This is to be noted as of relative import. I would say really important, based on what they have said before. But possibly within the context of this question, is to be noticed of relative import, the harmonious balance for harvest. And so they say, you know, we get your question, so we're going to try to answer it, stressing the unimportance of, you know, the generalizations that they're going to make. And they continue. They say, the entity before incarnation dwells in the appropriate, shall we say, place in time-space. The true color type of this location will be dependent upon the entity's need. Those entities, for instance, which, being wanderers, have the green, blue, or indigo true color core of mind-body-spirit complex will have rested therein. Meaning that before the incarnation, the entity dwells in its density, being a wanderer, of course. For instance, which being wanderers, yes. You know, it's almost implicit that they have to be wanderers for them to be incarnate in 3D. There's no reason for them to be in 3D other than to be of service in the way they are of service, depending on their density. So, depending on if they're 4th, 5th, or 6th density, they're going to be in one of those. That's why they mean green, blue, indigo true color. They're just meaning the density 4th, 5th, or 6th. So their mind, body, spirit complex will have rested there in time-space. Now remember, there is incarnation also in space-time, 4th, 5th, and 6th density. They're just dimmer, sort of difference between space-time and time-space, as opposed to here, where time-space is almost completely veiled. We only have access to our mind and consciousness, actually, and even that's a little murky, you know, for us. So there is seniority, not seniority. There is levels in which the densities. I made a video on this in Spanish. I always say it. I never did it in English. I'm sorry, but I did a whole diagram where I created time, space, and space-time on the densities, 3rd through 6th and even 7th, and you know, there is this interaction between time, space, and space-time between densities, but then there is also the incarnation of wanderers into space-time of 3rd density, which means that they have an analog of themselves in 3rd density time-space. So that's what we're talking about here. But these wanderers reside in one of the top ones, 4th, 5th, and 6th. And top just meaning not hierarchies, but you know what I mean? Simply higher states of consciousness. And so that's it. Before incarnation, that's what's happening. They are in their respective density of time-space, not space-time. I would think there is a possibility that you could be incarnate in space-time of a given density and then incarnate here in 3rd density, but I'm not too sure. They could be, based on what I've read from Kuo, when they talk about multiple personalities and so on, but I don't want to speculate there, so let's just stick with with the material that we have, which is enough. So Ra goes on and says, entrance into incarnation requires the investment or activation of the indigo ray or etheric body, for this is the form maker. Starting to get a picture here. The young or small physical mind-body-spirit complex has the 7 energy centers potentiated before the birthing process. There are also analogs in time-space of these energy centers, corresponding to the 7 energy centers in each of the 7 true color densities. Thus, in the microcosm exists all the experience that is prepared. It is as though the infant contains the universe, and so it does. So, First step, all right. Imagine this entity was in 5th density, and it said, you know what, I want to incarnate as a wanderer in 3rd density. It has to go to the indigo body, and that's because it's the form maker. The indigo body is higher self, is Atman, and is in the position to program the life of from that higher intelligence. It's in the position to program the incarnation in 3D, which I'm sure is the same process in 4th, 5th, and actually 6th density. You're kind of close there, so you're using the same intelligence to create your own body there. But in the lower ones, of course, you need the indigo. It's the form maker. That's why they refer to the indigo body, as we talked about. Again, I'm not sure, I think it was last session, 2 sessions ago, we talked about the different bodies. But yeah, that's the indigo ray body, the form maker. And so, okay, so it goes there, and then it creates the programming. Then it incarnates here in a given body, depending on the parents and so on. All of that is going on through the programming of the higher self. And they say the young or small physical mind body spirit complex has the 7 energy centers potentiated before the birthing process. All energy centers are always in potentiation. It's only the, as we discussed in previous sessions, the 3rd density body is the one that is activated here for the purposes of experience, for incarnation, this human body. And, that comes from time-space as well. It depends on your analog of time-space, how you create your body here too, but that's beyond the point. So they say there are also analogs in time-space of these energy centers, that's what I meant, corresponding to the 7 energy centers in each of the 7 true color densities. So you see, you're drawing now. This is where I need your imagination. Sorry, I could put it up here, but I'm sitting today, so it's not being drawn here. It's going to be drawn in your imagination. Now, picture me. Okay, I say I'm this wanderer from 5th density, and I have my body created here. I have an analog in time space. That analog is, what's projecting this here. Okay, this is me. It's one and the same. It's not separate. It's one and the same in time space, because time space is everywhere. So the vortices of energy that is coming from time space. Those energy centers in time space, which are the ones manifested here, my chakras and so on, they are directly related to each and one of my other bodies. This is why we say we have different bodies. It's 7 and 7 and 7. That's 49 times 7. All those bodies. It's one and the same. Okay, but the connection here is that my energy centers are attached, sort of, to my indigo body, my form maker body. That's my higher self. It's intelligence that is flowing through. So the intelligence that corresponds to my body, it's already in 6th density. The wisdom that is developed and is channeled through, if I allow it, of course, is from 5th density, and so on. So all of these, you can imagine lines coming from the 7 densities to the 7 chakras in 3rd density. That's what they mean here. Now I'll read it again and it'll make sense. There are also analogs in time-space of these energy centers corresponding to the 7 energy centers in each of the 7 true color densities. See? It's all lines. You can draw the lines. I don't like to make it this complicated. First, because I don't see any practical purpose other than to see the beauty of creation. But beyond that, I don't think, I need to work on my blue energy center because that is undeveloped due to incarnations of, I don't know. If people enjoy that, that's up to them. I don't think it should be this difficult or complex. For us, at least. This is not the density of understanding. This is the density of choice. Your choice is just how you enjoy your life, knowing that you are the one creator. How easy it is. It's pretty easy, right? That's the class. That's it. You know, you can go. Shut the video down. Don't even like or dislike anything. Just go. You're the creator. Go on. Forget about everything. Life is awesome. All right. Thus, in the microcosm exists all the experience that is prepared. It is as though the infant contains the universe. I love it. Beautiful. Yes, the microcosm, us, exists. In us exists all the experience that is prepared. Of course, the universe is inside us. All right. Ra goes on, says, the patterns of activation of an entity of high seniority will undoubtedly move with some rapidity to the green ray level, which is the springboard to primary blue. There is always some difficulty in penetrating blue primary energy, for it requires that which your people have in great paucity, that is, honesty. Blue ray is the ray of free communication with self and with other self. So see, now Ra is taking the example of Dun, which is a high seniority of vibration, which is somebody who has already activated the heart. And this means that it's going to be easier and faster for this entity to reach the heart in incarnation. It's going to be natural for this entity to develop the heart. You see, this is not to be confused with people who, I don't know, were under the impression, the illusion of separation for whatever means. You know, this can get very psychological into childhood and expressions of self, teenagers, rebellion, blah, blah, blah. You know, I didn't care about my parents. Oh, I did this, whatever. In fact, all of those things may be reflections of a free heart that has been oppressed. And the oppression was part of the programming. You see how complicated this gets? But in the end, you know, everybody has their hearts in potentiation. Wanderers have it in such a degree that it yearns for it. And so we may get into all these problems or trouble to mingle with society. It's normal. And so don't confuse that, you know, with a heart not activator and whatever. It's just what's calling from you, right? And so this is why they say they will move with some rapidity to the green ray level, meaning that all the catalyst, and actually not even the catalyst, the programming itself will bring that about. The activation of the heart really fast. Give you a good analogy or an idea to visualize this. If you program your game, okay, and you know what tools you need to improve whatever the map that you're creating, you will put those tools available for you so you can use them fast and reach, you know, a certain point in which you're going to be, oh, okay, you know, this is where I feel comfortable, in the heart. That's exactly what's happening. You know, you want to put, of course, you're going to put obstacles because that's part of, you know, the programming. And, you know, just I'm trying to illustrate how different it could be seen from different people in wanderers that have their heart already obviously, you know, activated. And so, you know, that's what they're saying with high seniority, going fast through the activation of everything all the way to green. Now, they mentioned that there is some difficulty always in penetrating blue, the blue energy center, primary blue. Remember, the primary energy centers are red, yellow, and blue. Okay, just like the primary colors. Why? Because this requires honesty. And in our illusion, this is a challenge. First, getting to love or feeling the love of the creation, not romantic love, of course. I think we're beyond that. Getting to that, it's quite difficult in our illusion right now. Now, you can see how difficult it is to express that love, to express that acceptance, to go beyond the lower energy centers that are always suppressing this sort of honesty, because we have to retain an image, we have to maintain some sort of social appearance. I don't know. You can imagine all the different things. And I like that Ra says that, your people having great paucity, honesty. Because honesty, blue ray, is the ray of free communication with self and with other self. And I think this is the crucial point. Free communication, I love that phrase, free communication with self. Are you honest with yourself? This is where I use the phrase brutally honest. You have to be brutally honest with yourself. Is there a reason why, I reacted this way? Well, that's just because it's how I am. No. There's more. What is it? And you go, and you delve deeper and deeper. And you keep finding more things that are covered by certain reactions and things that it just gets fascinating. So, yeah, this is honesty with self and of course with other self. You can't be honest with other people if you're not honest with yourself. I can talk about this for a long time, but that's not the point. It's just, it's a challenge, especially in our society, right? So, that is the process so far of seniority, a high seniority of incarnation, somebody incarnated here with high seniority. And all right, I guess this is assuming that it does go through the process of harvest. Okay, so Ra says, having accepted that a harvestable or nearly harvestable entity will be working from this green ray springboard, one may then posit that the experiences in the remainder of the incarnation will be focused upon activation of the primary blue ray of freely given communication, of indigo ray, that of freely shared intelligent energy, and, if possible, moving through this gateway, the penetration of violet ray, intelligent infinity. This may be seen to be manifested by a sense of the consecrated or hallowed nature of everyday creations and activities. Alright, so now they're going through assuming, basically. They're saying, assuming that, this is, that we have accepted this, that the harvestability, we know spiritual evolution, basically. The vast majority of the people on planet Earth have no idea of soul evolution. In fact, there is this Western idea which has infected the rest of the population in one way or another. And we live under these two paradigms. We live under the paradigm of religion in Western civilization, saying, you have to do good things. If you do bad things, you go to hell. And if you do good things, you go to heaven. And maybe, God will accept you because his mercy and all that stuff. The judge will figure out, what's going to be with you, And so there's no evolution. There's just all right, I'll just do good things. And we know that good things are polarized thinking, polarized thoughts. Everybody has their own way of thinking of what's good and bad and so on. So, the vast majority are not. And now, of course, and I am a former adept of the religion of science, the religion of technology, and the religion of physical evidence. This is the second paradigm in which we live, that there is no evolution. The evolution is just DNA and its random mutations and so on, so who cares? You could just be whatever. You're a nihilist. And a nihilist is one who denies all sort of evolution. So this impacts greatly, the purpose of being here and experiencing reality, or experiencing Maya, the illusion, So, in any case, we have accepted this. We have accepted that the entity knows about spiritual evolution and harvestability, of course. So a harvestable or nearly harvestable entity will be working from this green ray springboard. You see, this is why for harvest is necessary to have, Ra has mentioned this, there needs to be a balance between the red, yellow, and blue primary energy centers, because these are the ones that are sort of measured or that are important for the harvestable degree or nature of the entity. So you have to reach the heart in order to work with blue. You cannot work with blue without the heart. The heart is what feeds the blue in this sense. So love is what's expressed through wisdom, or wisdom rather is expressed with love. The primal resource of blue ray is green. That's why they call it the green blue or the blue green energy center, because it's just one acting as one, or two acting as one. So that's what primary blue ray, is important. Freely given communication, whatever that means to you, to me just means how you express about yourself. How are you accepting of yourself and of others? That's blue for me, right? Wisdom, and to know that we're all equal here. That's why negatives don't have it. So, or at least they don't work with it in a true fashion. They may distort it, but in any case, so that's what they're saying. This entity will work from green to activate blue, and of course, once you activate blue, there is indigo ray, which is that of freely shared intelligent energy. Intelligent energy is everything. Intelligent energy, if you remember, is that intelligence that is present in everything, and how you give yourself to others. What you give to others in love and wisdom is intelligent energy. You provide that. That's the light beaming that you have. That is the light that's given. To me, that's intelligent energy. How you put it out, how you give it to people, how you lift people, with your beingness. Could be, your children, could be, your co-workers, could be anybody, anybody around you. That is, working with energy, with intelligent energy. And then, of course, moving through this gateway, which is indigo ray, the penetration of violet ray. Remember, the third eye, indigo ray, this is one side of the portal to intelligent infinity. You work with this in a dual fashion. It receives and it goes, like you listen and you talk to intelligent energy, intelligent infinity through this. So that's why they say penetration of violet ray intelligent infinity. So they further say this may be seen to be manifested by a sense of the consecrated or hallowed nature of everyday creations and activities. You can see it manifested in your beingness when you behold anything and everything, as many things as possible, and the purpose or the objective being everything, really, as something consecrated. Not sacred in the sense of, that's not sacred, this is sacred. Obviously, I'm saying that everything is sacred, but it's the sense that we see hallowed, beautiful. I think beauty is probably a good word, where to start here. The beauty of the creation. And this is how you see it, as opposed to creating this conflict with anything in reality. You're not seeing the sacred part of it. And that's where indigo ray is important, because you eliminate polarity. There's no polarity. I'm neither inferior nor superior. I'm neither good nor bad. I'm neither, best or worse. Nothing. There is nothing. That is penetrating violet ray. There is nothing. See, everything else is just there for the expression of the self. There is no other way in which the self can express itself. It's almost like when you talk to yourself in your head. is your own mind talking to itself. But you're creating the illusion that there are two people. There is a talker and there's a listener. But it's you. It's only you. So it works the same way. And when you see that here, when you extrapolate this here, then you know that it's the same self talking to itself. Expressing me. I am yourself talking to you. You know, it's just one being. It's all a recurring theme. So beautiful. Anyhow, we have more to cover. We're like halfway through. Actually, we're more than halfway through, I think, through this question. Ra says, upon the bodily complex death, as you call this transition, the entity will immediately, upon realization of its state, return to the indigo form maker body and rest therein until the proper future placement is made. So this is just after death. It's going to go into I love how they say every phrase here is important to me, and especially because we covered death recently too. Upon the bodily complex death, so when we die, as we call this transition, it's not death as we define it as final. We're dead. It's over. It's not over. It's a transition. It's like, imagine going to bed and going to sleep and saying, it's over. My life's over. And you wake up the next day and you're like, oh, it's on again. That's death. You know, it's like, it's over, it's on. So it's a transition. The entity will immediately, upon realization of its state, that's covering its bases, saying that when you die and you finally realize your state, hey, I'm dead, you know, there's more. I'm not here to, oh, my computer, oh, my phone. You know, your ghost is still embracing your phone, trying to grab it and it can't. You know, it's a comical way to put, you know, our attachments to what creates, you know, the wandering ghost, lingering ghost here, which we talked about before. So upon realization of its state and of course acceptance, returns to the indigo body or the indigo form maker body and rests therein until the proper future placement is made. So we did, you know, the whole cycle already, because it goes back to the indigo body, which is where it started, and the proper future placement is made, meaning, all right, where do I want to go now? You know, do I want to go to my 4th, 5th, 6th? Where is it more beneficial? I have a belief that once you are, say, in 5th or 6th, you don't go back to 4th. You always go back to 3rd, because that's where most of the work is done. So, I don't know, could be wrong. Maybe there are, you know, instances. Maybe you don't even have to incarnate. You can just do work from time space. Who knows? But that's the full cycle. However, Ra's going to finish this up with a longer paragraph and say, here we have the anomaly of harvest. In harvest, the entity will then transfer its indigo body into violet ray manifestation as seen in true color yellow. This is for the purpose of gauging the harvestability of the entity. After this anomalous activity has been carefully completed, the entity will move into indigo body again and be placed in the correct true color locus in space-time and time-space, at which time the healings and learned teachings necessary shall be completed and further incarnation needs determined. Okay, so we have more to unpack here. What is the anomaly of harvest? They say, in harvest the entity will then transfer its indigo body into violet ray. So it's not like usual, or yeah, I think it's a good term. The usual death and rebirth, which is going to the indigo and going back to, say, 3rd. Indigo 3rd, indigo 3rd. In harvest, you go to your indigo and then transfer to violet ray, because this is where you analyze and you see your whole entity. You know, the whole entity. You see it. You see where does it stand. See? And so this is for the purpose of gauging the harvestability of the entity. Am I capable of sustaining the impact of light in 4th and 5th density, or 6th density, or even 7th density, depending on what harvest we're talking about. But in this case, we're talking about 3rd density. After this anomalous activity has been carefully completed, right? You check and see, all right, you know, I may be harvestable for 4th. So there's no God judging you saying, Oh, you don't go to fourth. You go repeat third. It's you. It's always you. And you say, well, I'm not ready. Let me go back to third. Or you say, yeah, I am ready. And you go. You can't cheat the system. It's like you can't. You won't be able to sustain the impact if you're not ready. And if you're ready and you say, which has been the case lately in this last cycle, a lot of the entities said, I'm ready for fourth, but I would rather go back and help my brothers and sisters. That's what they have been doing. Same with wanderers that have been coming here. This gets really fascinating, to be honest, because we can talk about the wanderers that have been coming here for recent incarnation, the dual activation body, which are 4 density bodies or entities that are coming here, is fascinating. The moment in which we are right now, harvest, is such a fascinating point in the evolution. But in any case, after this anomalous activity has been carefully completed, the entity will move into indigo body again and be placed in the correct true color locus in space-time and time-space, which basically means just, all right, let's go to indigo and say, I am ready for fourth, or I am ready for third, so we're going to place this entity, or I'm going to place this entity, I'm going to place myself, whatever. Words get a little tricky here. At which time the healings and learned teachings necessary shall be completed, and further incarnation needs determined. You see, I'm skipping important steps of the incarnation, but that's part of being in the indigo body. When you go to the indigo form, this is why after death you go immediately to indigo, because this is the place where you can analyze from higher self and say, oh, okay, there is no polarity. I actually wasn't a woman. I wasn't a man. I was an entity. I was energy. I wasn't a father. I was just an entity in the care or not care, of this entity, because this entity decided not to be, my son, or decided to be my son biologically, but not. You just lose any sort of polarity that exists in your mind. So this is the healing process. You go through all of this, and you say, okay, oh, lesson learned. Oh, I see. Oh, I didn't learn this lesson. Oh, okay. This is the healing process. So after that, then you say, all right, well, I understand everything. I see everything. I don't understand. I see everything. So I would like to place myself now under this and this and such programming. That is the further incarnation determination needs to happen after you visit Indigo Ray from that point. So that covers the whole cycle of 3D incarnation, 3D cycle, in a very generalized point of view, which is what Ra gave us. So, next question. First question is over after 40 minutes. God, I love this. Alright, question 8, Don says, who shall we say supervises the determination of further incarnation needs and sets up the seniority list, shall I say, for incarnation? And so, Ra says, this is a query with 2 answers. Firstly, there are those directly under the guardians who are responsible for the incarnation patterns of those incarnating automatically, that is, without conscious self-awareness of the process of spiritual evolution. You may call these beings angelic if you prefer. They are, shall we say, local, or of your planetary sphere. So this first one shows us I'm going to use the word mechanism, but it should rather be something like evolution or growth, probably better. Growth. This is showing the first step of growth for any entity. The first step of growth, and we'll use a second density animal, right? Second density entity, an animal, your pets, whatever pets you have had and they died, and you know in your heart that they were harvestable for third density. Well, guess what? Planet Earth has third density capabilities, so they were harvested here, and they incarnated for the first time as a human being. Well, guess what? They don't have contact with their higher self yet. They haven't been aware, self-aware. What do they call it? Conscious self-awareness of the process of spiritual evolution. They may be aware of the evolution of spirit, but not self-conscious. And this is what they're doing here. This is why they incarnate. So your pet was incarnated here, and in its first incarnation, it needed automatic incarnation, guided by the angels or guardians. That's what they call it. Guardians. These are entities which are, they have called it also gardeners, which I think is more beautiful, because we're talking about growth, and flowers grow, but they need a gardener at the beginning. And so that gardener is taking care of all these entities who are not self-aware of the process of evolution, spiritual evolution, that is. And so this is one side, because Don's question was like, who supervises all of this? And this is a question that has two answers. The first one is this one. There is an automatic process that is guarded, and it is mediated by these angels and guardians. And all they're doing is placing catalyst for you to see, obviously, your evolution, your heart. Catalyst is always there to improve the harvest. They're not here for positive or negative. They don't care. They're just putting catalyst for you to see, how do you like this? Oh, I like Rosset, Some like their picnics, in the dark, and others like it in the sun, and so on. But the picnic's there. The angels put the picnic there, and you decide how to enjoy it. So that's the first part of the answer. It's automatic, and it's guided by these unbiased guardians or angels, as Ross said it. The seniority of vibration is to be likened unto placing various grades of liquids in the same glass. Some will rise to the top, others will sink to the bottom. Layers and layers of entities will ensue. As harvest draws near, those filled with the most light and love will naturally, and without supervision, be in line, shall we say, for the experience of incarnation. So this is a little bit added here, and it shows a little bit more the progression of these automatic entities, automatic evolution for these entities. The seniority of vibration is something that will be seen from time-space, of course, as the entities grow in self-awareness of the self. Well, that's a little redundant there, but self-awareness. What are you being self-aware of? Of the self. You are being aware of yourself. The more you are aware of who you are, and that's the point here, the point is for you to realize who you truly are. Who are you? You're God. You are probably not God. You're divinity, source, whatever name, whatever word works for you. But that is, you are everything. You are the essence behind the whole universe. So, that is the process. And so, the more they will rise to the top, those who are more self-aware of this natural, of this nature of ourselves, others will sink to the bottom. That's right. That's how it goes. Layers and layers of entities will ensue. As harvest draws near, those filled with the most light and love will naturally, and without supervision, be in line, shall we say, for the experience of incarnation. Of course, those who have been more self-aware of who they are, those are the ones that are going to be ripe for the plucking of the divine hand, which is your own divine hand, into harvestability. So this is the process. Now, to the next part. They say, when the entity becomes aware in its mind, body, spirit, complex totality of the mechanism of spiritual evolution, it itself will arrange and place those lessons and entities necessary for maximum growth and expression of polarity in the incarnative experience before the forgetting process occurs. That's a long phrase. The only disadvantage of this total free will of those senior entities choosing the manner of incarnation experiences is that some entities attempt to learn so much during one incarnative experience that the intensity of catalyst disarranges the polarized entity, and the experience thus is not maximally useful as intended. Okay, so the second part, or the second answer to this is, are those who are aware of the process of evolution and it itself arranges and places those lessons and entities necessary for maximum growth and expression. This is the part that we talked about in the example of the wanderer before, in question 6, where, question 7, previous question, where the entity in indigo ray, form maker body, creates the programming of the incarnation. So this is what's happening. The only disadvantage of this total free will, see, before you were guarded by the guardians, you know, and they would place they know what to do. They know how to place you so you evolve over time. Not that they know what to do. They do as they should do. It's not, if you know what to do, it sounds like there is a way in which it should go. They simply put things as they should be. So the disadvantage of us having our free will is that sometimes we may attempt to learn too much at one given moment or one incarnation, and that is too much for us. And so this disarranges the polarized entity, and the experience thus is not maximally useful as intended. We basically bite more than we can chew. We, in Spanish, we say, I think I've said this before, I don't remember the English translation, but it's like the more you want to encompass, or the more you want to take in, the less you can squeeze. El que mucho abarca, poco aprieta. The more you can take in, the less you can squeeze in. So that is too much. And so we can do that. You know, we can program too much and be lost in that, and that disarranges our polarity, which is fine. You know, it's totally cool. It's part of the game. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's not the purpose, of course. Like, you want to keep learning. So, speaking of learning, Don has a good analogy here for this last answer, where he says, an analogy to that would be a student entering college and signing up for more courses than he could possibly assimilate in the time. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct. Question 10, and I believe this is the last one I have. Could you tell me how the various bodies red through violet are linked to the energy centers red through violet? Are they linked in some way? Oh yes, they are. Ra says, this shall be the last full query of this working. As we have noted, each of the true color densities has the 7 energy centers, and each entity contains all this in potentiation. The activation, while in yellow ray, of violet ray intelligent infinity is a passport to the next octave of experience, Buddha. And they keep saying, there are adepts who have penetrated many of the energy centers and several of the true colors. This must be done with utmost care while in the physical body. For as we noted when speaking of the dangers of linking red, orange, yellow circuitry with true color blue circuitry, the potential for disarrangement of the mind-body-spirit complex is great. However, the entity who penetrates intelligent infinity is basically capable of walking the universe with unfettered tread. Well, first of all, is there a link? Yes, there is, of course, between all the densities in our energy centers or chakras. That's why they say each of the true color densities, okay, we're talking about the densities, has the 7 energy centers. That means that just like here is their density, we have 7 energy centers, right? And we contain them all in potentiation. So each of, you can imagine that you have 7 bodies, 7 energy centers in each of the densities. So you have 49 bodies altogether. But in every one of those bodies you have other 7, so you have to multiply by 7, and you can see how this goes. It runs into infinity, like a Mandelbrot set going out of the set. So they say the activation while in yellow ray of violet ray intelligent infinity is a passport to the next octave of experience. Activating this body from yellow ray is the Buddha body. This is the Buddha body. This is where you see everything from the point of view that everything is consecrated. Everything is, there is no division between me and you. That point of consciousness is what activates one into the next octave. And we're talking about out of this octave, beyond even Ra. We don't know anything about that octave, the next octave. I love it. They say passport. That's awesome. So that's basically the evolution. That is the end of evolution here as we know it in the octave of experience that we're in. Ra says that there are adepts who have penetrated many of the energy centers and several of the true colors, of course. Since you're here in third density, you can penetrate many of these energy centers and several of the true colors, meaning that you have activated these energy centers to the point in which you can start to see the creation from these points of view, from fourth density, from fifth density, from sixth density, and beyond even. Many have activated their violet ray and they have gone out. This must be done with utmost care, of course, while the physical body, for they have spoken about the dangers of linking red, orange, yellow circuitry with true color blue circuitry. Yeah, there's a lot of that, because if you link it without the heart, that's what I read here. I may be wrong, I may be missing something, but without the heart, then yeah, that could be pretty bad. Ask Hitler. However, the entity who penetrates intelligent infinity space is capable of walking the universe with unfettered tread. Yes, when you penetrate intelligent infinity, meaning indigo work, indigo ray, or third eye. I think third eye doesn't really paint the picture here, but you know what I mean. Then you're free to roam the universe. You are the universe, actually. So you can see the whole universe as it is. You can see this as it is. This is the Buddha. So that's it. Conclusions of this. I think it begs the question of what are we here for? Now that we saw the whole cycle of incarnation in 3D, what are we here for? We know of spiritual evolution. At least we are within the minority of people who understand spiritual evolution. And what's the point? What's the point of knowing this? What do you do? Well, as it was delineated here by Ra, you have your life, which is a projection of yourself as it is right now. This is the field of study. The field of study is yourself. You being, or rather the external world being a projection of who you are, it's telling you where you are in your point of evolution of seeing consciousness. Which point of consciousness is actually observing outside there? This calls into consideration your actions, not your actions as activities, but your mental actions, how you perceive yourself, first of all. That is honesty. Well, we're accepting that we're working with acceptance at this point, right? We're accepting that we're accepting acceptance. We are accepting everything in the world, right? When we accept it, how do we feel? What's the feeling that's generated? And how do we express it? Not to others, but we express, right? External, press out. Express, that's expression. The word says it. How do we express out ourselves? That is the field of study again. Whatever we are doing, like Ross said, the heart is the springboard. From there, from love and acceptance is where we work through expression. And we say, okay, how do I accept this? How do I accept that? How I express myself in free communication. That is blue. And then, of course, the sharing of intelligent energy, like I said, this is just how you are in the world, how you behave, you know, and there is no right or wrong. That's the key thing. That's our demons. They're always chasing us, telling us, you know, yo, I've been doing it wrong all this time. I gotta start doing things right. Beyond that, there is, you know, the indigo work, which again, there's no polarity. If you're doing work in indigo ray, you know, because you cancel out polarity. And polarity is everywhere. So it's not like you cancel it out and you obliterate polarity. It's that you unify polarity. So it's not about, you know, oh, there's no good or bad. It's about accepting that both are mutually inclusive. They need each other. There is a binding force in between the two. That is working with indigo ray intelligence, higher self, Atman intelligence. There is nothing separate because everything is secretly one. And again, going back to the heart and the blue-green energy center, we can use this as our tool for seeing the self outside, seeing the self out there, the self, myself. Where is it that I'm still seeing polarity? Do I still see myself inferior or less than? Or do I still feel myself superior or more than? These are the things that we need to find out. And this is where we need to be brutally honest with ourselves. So, I think this is probably the best practical point I can get out of this. Speaking of the energy centers and how we can project them out there, knowing that we are already in the density of love and understanding, that is energy that is streaming and it's being magnetized, it's being absorbed by us. How are we going to express that? See, that's the key point. So that's all I got for today. This brings session 48 to a close. In the end, they just as usual, you know, if there was anything to make Carla more comfortable and to improve the contact, and they just said that she was a little bit weak. Continued work times with Lethan. They said that the work that they were doing will lengthen this weakness. The continued contact also aids, you know, the contact aids with her vital energies, and it was just about, you can go read it. I don't think there's much to take out of this. Remember, I'm always passionate about things that are practical for us, as a method of talking about the material, the raw material. We can talk about this, but I'm gonna leave it at this. And just like Ron said, Adonai, I say thank you so much for being part of this, and that's it. Session 49 is next. I'll see you there.